I have been watching Erin Hadimer's videos for a long time. She's a really funny gal, and I found her on the internet because we briefly attended the same college, though not at the same time, because she's like now a mega famous internet comedian. And she would do these really funny sketches where she would film herself from different angles as different characters. And like she would do funny things about all kinds of world events that were happening, and what if this particular movie became real life. And she's hilarious. And I noticed this year that the videos started slowing, and she was making less and less content with her little sketches. And a lot of people began to notice and began to comment like, Erin, is everything okay? And we weren't sure what was going on, and the sketches slowed down, and Erin's comedy sort of slowly disappeared because she was down and slumped and sort of just under the weight of the world. And that's where we find ourselves in the book, in this chapter of Isaiah. It's not necessarily chronological, but in the 6th chapter of Isaiah, we've been given the context that the people have forgotten who God is, that the people have forsaken God, that the leadership is corrupt. You know, it's a lot of the things that Todd mentioned in his prayer today, that the leadership is fraught and corrupt, and greed has led to injustice, and things are just a whole mess amongst the people in that moment. And here we have this vision, this prophet, this dreamer dreaming great dreams. And it's like, I mean, who among us does not want to have this huge sacred experience, that feeling of knowing, that feeling of certainty, that lightning strike moment of knowing that God is with us and we are called and we have a deep purpose? Who doesn't want that? And it's a good story. I mean, it made it into the book. The story of like, Isaiah had this wide awakening, knowing and seeing God and knowing that he was called and knowing that he had a purpose and being sent forth from God, God's self. That is the ultimate of the ultimate. That's what we all want. The big drama tells us a great story. It's a clear message, and here's what to do. But the thing is, most of us don't ever have that moment. Most of us never, not once in our whole lives, have a lightning strike message from God moment. In fact, most of us show up in conversation with one another because we're not sure there's anyone on the other end of the line when we pick up the phone to say a prayer. Most of us can't even feel certain about what we believe at any given moment, any given time, because the world is so scary and it's so messy. And it's like, where is God? What is God even doing right now? Where is the lightning? Where is God not reaching in like God would do in the ancient scriptures? Why can't we have that God who reaches in and acts among us? Most of us just feel a sense of radio silence. I recently heard a story. A woman named Beth was talking about how when she was 5 years old was when her mom died of breast cancer. And it was just wildly unfair because her mom suffered tremendously. And before her mom had suffered tremendously, her mom had lost a baby at 9 months old from a rare genetic liver disorder that they couldn't do anything about at the time in 1975 when it happened. And it was so unfair because her mom had also lost her own mom to cancer, and her mom's mom had lost her mom to cancer, and Beth later then lost her aunt to cancer. And she felt like there was no one on the other end of the prayer, absolutely feeling totally abandoned and alone. And then here we have this big vision, this big, beautiful vision of God, and this God asking, who shall I send? This faithful, clear as a bell response, here am I, send me. To do what? Even in the rest of the super complicated passage that we're not really diving into today, it's not exactly clear what God really wants of the person that God is sending out. It's just we talk about this person having a sense of purpose, this person having a sense of call. Call to what? Purpose to do what? It's not even clear in the scripture with this big, holy, sacred moment. Even Isaiah, even the prophet doesn't have certainty about what's coming. But yeah, it's a call. It's not a sense of ordained purpose. It's just holy, holy, holy. So it was Gaza. that had Erin Hadimer, the comedian, down. She just felt like, how am I making comedic sketches? How am I constantly just like out here talking about nothing that matters at all when kids are dying every day, when people are dying, how am I even standing on my feet, let alone laughing when people across this world are being senselessly killed, are experiencing horrible, senseless violence? And so she started learning. Of course, we know there are a lot of ways to help in a crisis, even though we feel helpless. And there are two big ways in Gaza that most of us, that would be honestly the two big ways that we could help. And most of us just see the one side of it. And the one side of it is, okay, well, we can make phone calls, even when they feel like they're not doing anything. We can make phone calls, we can write letters, but we can send our funds to organizations like Save the Children and Doctors Without Borders, agencies that are doing work on the ground, that are here, that are there right now, and that will be there whatever comes next. But then there are all these people who are suffering. You know, it's the whole old thing of like, when people are being tossed in the river and downriver, people are pulling folks out of the river to get them out of the river. And it's like, okay, well, we need to pull people out of the river, and we need to go upstream and stop getting people thrown in the river. This is that. You've got the institutional, systematic levels that we can help at, and then there's individual level. And what Erin noticed was through this organization called Operation Olive Branch was that there was another way. There was a way to help pull people out of the river, that people in Gaza, in fact, were making a number of people who couldn't sustain in the situation as it was, were making GoFundMes to get their families out, because the fees to leave the country through the only open crossing in Egypt, Rafah, is like $5,000 for an adult, $3,500 for a kid, and that cost has risen as the border has shut for periods of time. And so some families have decided they want to try to leave without the ability or resources to do so. So they started these GoFundMes. Well, of course, GoFundMes are a difficult thing. You set it up on the internet and you have your funding goal, but then anybody can set up a GoFundMe. And how do you know that somebody's not just pretending they're in Gaza and trying to scam good people off of a difficult moment? Well, enter this grassroots organization that is not run by any NGOs, that is run by a massive group of volunteers who wanted to make change. They called themselves Operation Olive Branch, and they started by wanting to provide perinatal care in Gaza, because that was one of the really big areas of healthcare that was lacking. And so they were making connections with local organizations, but even more than that, not more importantly, but beyond that, they were making direct connections with doctors who were providing that kind of care, with nurses, with medical staff who were on the ground providing that kind of care, and making direct gifts. And then when these GoFundMe started popping up everywhere, they started doing the work, the detailed work of verifying it. And some people who are involved in this grassroots organization have their feet on the ground in Gaza, are there, and are able to actually go and have face-to-face conversations with the people who have started these GoFundMes. So they have rooted out some folks who started fake people who were trying to exploit the situation, and then they have lifted up families that really were in need of help. But the problem is, we do what we do as humans. When there's too many options of things to do, we just get horribly overwhelmed and we do nothing because we're not sure what the right thing to do is. So this comedian, this gal who makes TikTok sketches and scrapes by for a living, doing whatever odds and ends she can do outside of this, decided she was going to use her platform because she's got more than a couple million people following her. So she started highlighting families in a project she called Pass the Hat. So it's like, everybody puts a few bucks in the hat. And if we can get enough people putting a few bucks in the hat, we can make really big change. So she used her platform to elevate voices, to put forth the story of individual families who could use a buck or two from a couple thousand people. And these GoFundMes started meeting their funding goals. And these doctors who were trying to raise funds for perinatal care began getting their funding goals met. And in little tiny ways, little drops in the bucket, little dollars in the hat, people were helped. Lives were changed. And guess what? there are still tons of families in need. There are even more people. There's so many needs. There's so many people beyond the people who are trying to leave who cannot leave. Like, we have to acknowledge that most people cannot leave this situation. And so all of the ways of helping and giving are important, but that doesn't diminish that someone in a situation who could help saw it, heard it, stood up, and did what she could do. She pestered people who had massive followings online, couple million people, and said, do you know how much you could do? If you made one video that reached 9 million people, do you know how much money you could raise just by using your voice for a 60-second video? And so it started happening. More and more people started doing it. And more organizations got involved with donating their profits, be it to an organization or to a family or to a doctor, and helping out. And like I said, it doesn't do everything, and it doesn't fix the problem, but it's not nothing. And indeed, it is holy, holy, holy. No holds barred, absolutely sacred work of God and happening. And Beth, the gal who lost her mom and felt like, there was no one ever on the other end of the prayers, she had done the genetic testing, and of course, with a family history like that, she was prone to it as well. And she was getting a preventative mastectomy when she talked to her aunt. And her aunt told her the story of when Beth's mom was so sick with the breast cancer and was laying in the hospital bed. And the aunt came in the room one day, and this mom, who had even had to have some amputations of limbs, was laying in her bed, sick and frail and joyful, crying tears of joy. And she explained, they just started doing liver transplants. They're doing it because that's the thing that would have saved her 9-month-old baby that they weren't doing in 1975. But now they are, and somebody else's baby is going to get that liver transplant. They're doing it. And when Beth got her mastectomy, which hadn't been an option for her mother, she thought, Mom, they're doing it. And she said every time now that she is out in the world and she sees something that is sacred, be it large or small, inconsequential or world-changing, she says, Mom, they're doing it. And that is the attitude with which she looks at this whole world of finding and seeing and loving the sacred. I don't think purpose is about something that finds us like a lightning strike and sticks with us our entire lives. I don't think it's about something that we're meant to cling on to and that's the only thing that we have to give. I think it's about being awake and alive and present to the moment, to what is in front of us, to who is in front of us. And when there is an opportunity for us to do good, to do love, to be the face and hands and heart of God, to say, here I am, and to do what we can do. I think it is very much that simple. And it is never something that we can do alone. The work of love is something that we all know happens better when we're in community, happens more effectively when we're in community. So we stand where we stand and we look at this world and we see what we can do, see what can be done. May we be present, may we be ready, may we be willing, and may when the need arises, may we find ourselves saying, here I am. Amen.